Living, where U of I Extension's Sandy Mason is answering your good garden questions.
And we've got our first question from Sandra via email, and she asks, I have white flies on most of my hanging baskets and pots. What is the best way to get rid of them? They swarm out when I water.
And actually, this is a question I've gotten from a couple different people, and I've even noticed on my own tomato plants, when you touch the plants or you water them, these little flies come out, and they're called white fly. They actually do suck out plant juices, so they're not really good for the plant, but unless you have really high populations, it's not a huge deal. But a heavy stream of water just underneath the leaves, because that's where they're going to be hanging out, or you can use insecticidal soap, again, sort of underneath the leaves, and then spray them down. It's usually not a huge deal, but it may be something you want to deal with.
All right.
Here's the question from Jennifer Carnes-Kinney via Facebook. Is there anything we can put on our garden at the end of the season to help with weed control next year?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is an excellent question because people have these issues with weeds. So probably a couple things is make sure that they don't go to seed. That's the biggest thing. No matter what weeds you have, don't let them go to seed, because then you're going to have seeds.
So dandelions, when they get to the little
even if you have to mow them or pull the flower heads off or something, even if you can't get the whole, because that's how they're going to reproduce next year. So do that. You can also, a lot of these actually need open soil in order to germinate. So mulching can help. So you can sort of cover them up, mulch them, that can help. And also just pay attention on why you're tilling. Every time you till or dig or anything, that's bringing all those weed seeds back up again. So really pay attention to that. There are some pre-emergent herbicides that you can use, but you have to read the label and make sure that it is something that you can use on those particular crops. But usually mulching, and just really make sure that you get those seeds out of there before they actually drop onto the ground.
The pre-emergent insecticides, you said that they were?
It's actually a herbicide. It's an herbicide. And you'd put it on, and usually you're going to put it on probably at the beginning of the season, and then it keeps the seeds from germinating. But then you have to be really careful, because if you're using radish seeds or whatever, you can't use them in the same spot.
Yeah.
So you really have to pay attention.
Do you have animals and pets?
Yeah, that's really, as far as the herbicides is, with any of these things, read the label, read the label, read the label, and use it according to label directions. And really, and they really can help for a lot of the weeds as well.
Okay, next up, Kathy Palmer Anderson via Facebook wants to know what can be done about vine borders. Many people I know are all having the same problem with them wiping out all of our squash the last 2 years. What's a vine border?
Yeah, actually a vine, it's actually a borer. It actually is a clear-winged moth, and she'll actually lay her eggs on the vine, and then the caterpillars actually will be inside the vine. So you can see it's really tough to get rid of them because they're inside the vine. So insecticides don't really work all that well, so they're really, really tough. So a couple things. What good sanitation at the end of the year, just getting that stuff out of there can help. You know, just make sure any of the vines and stuff, get them out of there, especially if you're having year after year problem. So that might be one thing. And I know this is probably a tough thing, but sometimes you actually sort of have to give up for a year and then at least don't grow squash in that spot or in that garden, and let the population drop and then try it again the next year, because the populations start to build up and then you have a big problem with them. So squash vine borer is really a hard thing on squash, and it's all kinds of things like zucchini and anything that kind of produces those vines. So it's a tough insect.
That's where you hit up your friends and say, listen, I'll plant extra tomatoes if you plant some squash.
It really is a tough one.
Yeah. All right, we have another question from Lois Elaine Jones. She sends this in via Facebook too. My rose bushes are 8 to 10 feet tall and blooming well. Is it okay to prune them at this time of year? How short should I or can I take them?
This isn't a great time to be pruning things, especially heavy pruning. So a couple things. In the springtime, and this, since it's blooming now, it's one that's going to be blooming on new wood, the new stuff. So you don't really have to worry about it too much as to when you prune them. So you can do a heavy prune in the spring. That's probably the big thing. And maybe take it back to 8 to 10 and, do a heavy prune. This time of year, I'd probably do a very light prune and then really plan on next spring. Most of the time, for most of the rose bushes, you can do, 8 to 10, 12 inches. I mean, you can do a pretty heavy prune on most of them and have pretty good success. And the fact that they're so big, probably need a good prune.
Okay, we have a tomato question from Wendy.
Yes.
And she asks, I have about 15 tomato plants and not a single red one yet. This has never happened to me before. Any reason why they wouldn't be turning red? We got 30 seconds.
We know we have a few people that have red ones, so it's going to happen. It's usually a weather issue. Really cool or really hot, then they don't ripen very fast. So if they're just starting to get a little blush on them, take them inside. They'll go ahead and ripen indoors and actually be better quality.
This is a quick follow-up to the tomatoes that we were talking about a little earlier in the show. which tomatoes work best for this environment out of all that spectrum of tomatoes that you have to
You know, a lot of it is, I think a lot of the main crop ones like the Big Beef and Celebrity, some of them that I kind of selected here I think are good. So look for those. And then if you have space, play with some of these other ones, like have some of the heirlooms and play with some other ones. So it's really always good to have a few extras too to play.
All right. Always fun having you here,
Yeah,
Sandy.
great,
Thanks so
good,
much for
good.
coming in, answering all of our gardening questions. If you need any more information, go to styliving.tv and we'll get you connected. We'll be right back.